Good morning. Y'all getting better at that. Y'all bow with me, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for everything you do for us individually, corporately, as a group. Thank you for the day. Thank you for the weekend where we can spend it with our families and gear down a little bit from this place. Lead us and guide us. Let us do things that please you. Let us have another wonderful day in your kingdom. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Another miracle. You never cease to amaze me. All right, Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the simplest bill I'll probably ever bring before you. At the request of Chairman Willard, it's a cleanup of two changes that were inadvertently left out of the new evidence code a few years ago. In 2014, this bill passed the House but did not get called up before sine die in the Senate. The first part of this bill brings the State Board of Registration for forced... Oh my gosh. Modified structure, 486 at the very bottom of the page. Does this mean I have to come back tomorrow?
The only thing I'm getting scared about is that you said Mr. Willard. Brevity is not in his repertoire. I hope that it is in yours. You've wasted all your time. Do you want to tell us what this bill does?
The first part of this bill brings the State Board of Registration for Foresters into compliance with how records are kept, consistent with all other state departments and boards in the state. And the second is an important change. It gives Department of Public Health discretion in the disclosure of AIDS and HIV information to a minor's legal guardian or parent. This is following a national policy shift on this. This change was intended to be included a few years ago.
Mr. Willard,
May I ask one question about that second part, Mr. Chairman?
I thought it was your bill and you've got a question about it.
I want to be sure everybody's clear. What it does. Is it not true, Mr. Reeves, that the second part dealing with this disclosure of AIDS is going back to the way the law was when it was inadvertently changed with the rewrite of the evidence code? That's
right. This was a Scrivener's error a few years ago in the new evidence code, and this is putting it back to where it was.
A Scrivener. Okay, we're going to halt for just a second. I want y'all to turn around. Oh, never mind. Look to the rear. Boys, step forward a little bit. Right there's good. Y'all. That's my twin grandsons. They're going to page here today. Anybody that's caught being mean to them will suffer. But I expect you to give them a hard time. I give them a hard time. My son and my daughter-in-law and my wife are back there too, so y'all say hey. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to all the committee members, good morning. I bring before you today House Bill 847. It's in modified structure rule, back of the page, 7th from the bottom. It moves welfare fraud under Title 16 where it should have been all along. It's just a cleanup bill. The prosecuting attorney council are the ones who have asked for this. which hopefully will deter fosters from committing it if they see it in the list of crimes, which means we can help more of the truly needy.
Any questions, Ms. Clark? No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you HB 879, which is modified open rule. It's at the very bottom of modified open rule. HB 79 establishes the Georgia Seal of Biliteracy to recognize high school students who have attained a high level of proficiency in speaking, reading, or writing one or more languages in addition to English. Seals included on a high school diploma or transcript. Right now, we have over 3,060 international companies in Georgia from more than 50 countries. They employ about 175,000 people. They are looking for people with biliteracy. There is no fiscal impact to this. The student would pay to take this test, demonstrating proficiency in reading, writing, and speaking a second language, but it just would allow universities as well as companies to recognize that biliteracy is an important thing for the economic development. This passed out of Economic Development and Tourism unanimously. I'll take any questions, sir.
Ms. Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a simple question. How much is the test cost?
The test typically runs, depending on the language, because some are more complex, between $35 and $100 is typically what that is. And that can be funded by a school system. This is not a mandate. This is voluntary for any school system in the state. It can be funded by the school system. It can be funded by the individual, or if it was a private school, by tuition.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Taylor, Chairman Taylor, there were some questions in the Economic Development and Tourism Committee about getting with the school board with this school superintendent working it out. Have you guys managed to accomplish that yet?
Yes, and I'll probably be offering a slight amendment just based on the scores with that, but we did pass that out of committee with the understanding that the Department of Education is fully behind this with those changes. Yes, sir.
No more questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Halkel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. I present to you House Bill 827, which is modified structure rule, backside of the page, fifth one down. The purpose of this bill, which is supported by law enforcement, GBI, victims' rights advocates, and care providers, is to set forth a system for ensuring that rape kits do not linger on shelves, which we know has been happening across the state. It sets forth a process by which the kits will be transferred to local law enforcement and then ultimately to GBI, who will be the end custodian. GBI is fully supportive of this role and responsibility, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Kendrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am presenting HB 6, which is the first bill under modified structure rule on the first page. And this bill would allow the Georgia Student Finance Commission to award over a 4.0 towards Hope credit for advanced level STEM classes that high school students would take. So it's limited to only STEM classes and advanced level classes, which include advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and dual enrollment classes. And so it would allow students who make an A to receive additional credit that they deserve towards Hope Scholarship.
Mr. Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the gentlelady in the podium. Can you comment on the feedback you've received from schools that are accepting these type of applications, and how they would be able to compare the students that have over a 4.0 GPA to other students that are competing for those same slots that have a 4.0 GPA?
I'm not quite understanding your question, but
can you just explain to the committee how the schools that are accepting these GPAs that may be in excess of 4.0, and how that in these some schools that allow that, and compare those students for those slots that are available to that do not have a GPA that's above 4.0. Just explain to us how that would impact.
It's only for Hope GPA, so you might be referring to the actual transcripts, but we're talking about credit towards the Hope Scholarship.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
No more questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good morning. I'm bringing before you this morning under modified open rule, fourth from the bottom, HB 826. HB 26, the substance of it is to provide for requirements for advertisement and publication of representation of board certification by physicians. This basically makes it so physicians can't hold themselves out to be board certified unless their certification comes from the American Board of Medical Specialties or the American Osteopathic Association. It's basically a truth in advertising bill. Consumer protection does not affect licensure. And I ask for your favorable consideration on this bill. Any questions?
Mr. Williams.
To the author, currently, what are there any right here? Are there any penalties when this happens now? I'm just trying to figure out the necessity. What happens now if someone falsely represents himself?
Nothing, as far as I know. This would allow for the Composite Board of Medical Examiners to issue sanctions as they deem fit.
I think Ms. Price came last week and y'all didn't recognize the fact that it's the first time she was here and you didn't abuse her any, and she walked outside and said, well, that wasn't too bad. I don't know what she meant by that or what y'all were thinking. Thank you, Ms. Price.
Thank you.
Mr. Pizzo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 93, modified structured, second from the bottom on the first page. This bill does two main things. It exempts automated license plate reader data from open records requests. Most violent crimes are committed by people who know their intended victims. So under current law, I could run an open records request on anybody's license plate number and ascertain their whereabouts, going back as far as the data is kept. And there's currently is no law restricting how long the data can be kept. This bill simply states that after 90 days, if as the driver of a vehicle you are not suspected of any crime or not part of any investigation, that any records containing your data must be purged. I'll yield for questions.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mabra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 804, and that's first page, middle of the page, modified open rule. House Bill 804 adds a fifth Superior Court judge to the Clayton County Circuit, increase in population in Clayton County. Of course, with the increase in population, you also have increase in crimes, and these are serious crimes, felony crimes. And the last time a judge was added to the Superior Court was 1984. In other courts, the state court, they added 3 judges since then, and in juvenile court, 2 judges since then. I ask for your favorable consideration on House Bill 804.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the committee. The minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to put my name beside HB 497, the surplus state property bill, and ask for HB 804, the 5th judge for the Clayton Judicial Circuit.
Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask for the committee's consideration of HB 845. It's a bill that passed from Non-Civil Judiciary Committee unanimously. It's a cleanup bill that cleans up some work we've done in previous years around child pornography, and it simply provides a good faith exemption for people who are reporting child pornography. Currently, in my district, there was a mom that came across some of it and was reporting it in a way that was in good faith, and there was the possession of it for purposes of reporting makes someone be in possession of it. And it's a good faith exemption that's consistent with other good faith exemptions.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the back page under structured rule, House Bill 762, this is putting into a statute of our state a policy that should have already been there, which is recognizing that there cannot be a marketing and selling of fetuses. This came about as a result of the publicity this past summer, and as I looked into the law, realized that we, in fact, did not have this prohibition, and that's the purpose behind the bill.
Any questions on that bill? Raise your hand since I've got, okay. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by House Bill 826. That's the modified open rule, under modified open. We're having a problem across the state. We've had several deaths with doctors holding themselves out to be certified, which means you have a residency and sometimes even past a residency in a specialty. And we're having deaths with people doing plastic surgery procedures when they're not qualified. Thank you.
Which one was that again?
826, sir, under modified open.
Okay. Mr. Rogers. Other Rogers. One of y'all going to change your name or get off the committee.
I'm telling you. He's got seniority. That kind of scares me. Mr. Chairman, I simply want to put my name by HB 879. That's the biliteracy bill. Heard it through the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. Really, would be really good for the job force.
Ms. Dempsey.
Mr. Chairman, on the back, the very last bill, modified structure, HB 902, this legislation requires assisted living facilities to provide residents with educational information on influenza disease and the CDC's recommendations of an annual vaccination. It is the third component. We have done nursing homes and hospitals, and now this will address that in assisted living.
Mr. Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under modified structured House Bill 849, this is the creation of a state civil rights act. We're one of 4 or 5 states that doesn't have one. It's also known as a Public Accommodation Act. In our last meeting, Mr. Earhart had talked about a potential amendment to more tightly define one of the protected classes that was included in the substitute from the committee. I have no objection to that language. However we choose to deal with it at the appropriate time, I just wanted to express that I had no objection to the amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Smyrie.
Mr. Chairman, under the modified structure rule, I'd like to add my name to House Bill 6. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, under open rule, I'd like to add my name to HB 804 and under structured HB 6.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we're setting for tomorrow. I'm going to move HB 555 from modified structure to structure. And I need a move on it.
Move.
All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We've got an opposition, so we'll do it with a show of hands. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, same sign. It's on. Under modified structure, HB 818, the workers' comp.
Move.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
It's on. Under modified structure, HB 869. Any opposed? It's on. Under structure, HB 762. All those in favor signify by aye. Any opposed? It's on. Under modified open, HB 813. Any opposed? It's on. And I did keep his daughter's note, so under modified structure, HB 486. Any opposed? It's on. After today, this will be a good Wednesday. Bye.